The man of many names, Túrin Turambar, the wronged, the black sword, the elf man, the master of doom. A legendary hero that lived a life of adventure and bitter sorrow. Today we look at this man of myth that traversed the vast landscape of Beleriand of old in the First Age, and slowly but surely made his way to the inevitable fate that awaited him. Born into the house of Hador, one of the three houses of the Edain, Túrin was son of Húrin and Morwen. Húrin was a legendary figure in his own right, and was lord of Dor-lómin, a segment of Hithlum which was ruled by the Noldorin elves. Túrin loved his sister's vibrant spirit, which filled his heart with peace. Her name was Urwin, and she was a child of great laughter. In the time leading up to the catastrophic battle of unnumbered tears, a dark mist was unleashed from the bowels of Morgoth's stronghold, which spread across the lands of northern Beleriand that was known as the Evil Breath, which caused many to contract a sickness. Urwin and Túrin both became sick with the evil mist. Although Túrin was able to overcome the sickness, his younger sister did not. From an early age, Túrin learned of grief and despair. The loss of Urwin filled the young Túrin with a burning hatred for the Dark Lord, and the grief he felt for the passing of his innocent sister stayed with him for many years to come. When Túrin was still a boy, the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, or the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, was waged, which resulted in a devastating loss for the enemies of Morgoth. Túrin's father Húrin survived the battle, but was captured by the enemy and taken to Angband, where the Dark Lord exchanged words with him. Therefore, Húrin was brought before Morgoth, for Morgoth knew by his arts and his spies that Húrin had the friendship of the king, and he sought to daunt him with his eyes. But Húrin could not yet be daunted, and he defied Morgoth. Therefore, Morgoth had him chained and set in slow torment. But Húrin the Steadfast mocked him, saying, "Blind you are, Morgoth Bauglir, and blind shall ever be, seeing only the dark. You know not what rules the hearts of men, and if you knew, you could not give it. But a fool is he who accepts what Morgoth offers." Then Morgoth laughed, and he said,
"Death you may yet crave of me as a boon."
Then he took Húrin to the Hald in Nirnaeth, and it was then new built, and the reek of death was upon it. And Morgoth set Húrin upon its top, and bade him look west towards Hithlum, and think of his wife and his son and other kin.
"For they dwell now in my realm,"
said Morgoth,
"and they are at my mercy."
"You have none," answered Húrin, "but you will not come at Turgon through them, for they do not know his secrets." Then wrath mastered Morgoth, and he said,
"Yet I may come at you, and all your cursed house, and you shall be broken on my will, though you all were made of steel."
And he took up a long sword that lay there and broke it before the eyes of Húrin, and a splinter wounded his face, but Húrin did not blench. Then Morgoth, stretching out his long arm towards Dor-lómin, cursed Húrin and Morwen and their offspring, saying,
"Behold, the shadow of my thought shall lie upon them wherever they go, and my hate shall pursue them to the ends of the world."
But Húrin said, "You speak in vain, for you cannot see them, nor govern them from afar, not while you keep this shape, and desire still to be a king, visible on earth." Then Morgoth turned upon Húrin, and he said,
"I am the elder king, Melkor, first and mightiest of all the Valar, who was before the world, and made it. The shadow of my purpose lies upon Arda, and all that is in it bends slowly and surely to my will. But upon all whom you love, my thought shall weigh as a cloud of doom. and it shall bring them down into darkness and despair. Wherever they go, evil shall arise. Whenever they speak, their words shall bring ill counsel. Whatsoever they do shall turn against them. They shall die without hope, cursing both life and death.
The curse inflicted on Húrin and his house by Morgoth would come to define the life of the mighty Túrin. His mother Morwen successfully hid Túrin during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, and eventually sent him to the domain of the Grey Elf King, Thingol, in Doriath. Morwen remained in Dor-lómin, for she was pregnant with her third child. In Doriath, Túrin was taken in by the Elf King as a son and was cared for there. Thingol and his wife Melian sent an invitation to Morwen to join her son in the protection of Doriath, but Morwen declined the offer, choosing to stay in her realm of Dor-lómin with her newborn baby girl, Nienor. Instead of leaving her home, Morwen sent back to Doriath a gift for her son Túrin, the dragon helm of Dor-lómin, which had been passed down for generations in the house of Hador. Although Túrin was safe in Doriath, he missed his mother, and he was saddened by her decision to not join him there with the Grey Elves. This only added to the sorrow and pain that grew in his heart. While he aged in Doriath, the young Túrin learned many skills from the elves, such as combat, hunting, and the Sindarin Elvish tongue. After many years in Doriath, Túrin joined the elven forces guarding northern Doriath with his elven comrade Beleg. The elves, along with Túrin, fought off many orc bands, and Túrin became a famed foe of the orcs in those lands. During this time fighting alongside the Grey Elves, Túrin was ambushed in the woods by the elf Cyros, an advisor to King Thingol. Cyros had disdain for Túrin and didn't think the man was worthy to live amongst the elves of Doriath. The day prior, Cyros disrespected Túrin and his fellow men of Dor-lómin, referring to them as animals. Túrin, enraged, hit Cyros with a chalice. In an act of retribution, Cyros ambushed Túrin and was consequently struck down by the warrior. Túrin then stripped Cyros of his clothes and told him to run back to the king like an animal. While running away from Túrin in the forest, Cyros fell into a chasm in the earth and perished. In light of this, Túrin felt that Thingol would not pardon his actions, and so he abandoned his elven home in Doriath and fled into the wild, donning a new name, Nathan, which meant the wronged. In the forest of Brethil, Túrin came into the company of bandits, led by a man named Forwig, a deserter from the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. The group of outlaws were a barbarous sort, and Túrin was not fond of their treacherous lifestyle. One day, he noticed a girl running for her life in the forest. He attacked the man chasing her, and after the pursuer was on the ground, Túrin noticed he had accidentally killed Forwig. Túrin returned to the outlaws and became their new leader. He used the strength of the outlaws for good following his ascension to captain of the band, and drove away foul orcs that roamed those lands. After some time with the outlaws, Túrin's elven companion Beleg came to him. He told Túrin that Thingol was willing to pardon him for his actions against Cyros and invited him to return to Doriath. Túrin declined the offer, and Beleg returned to Doriath without his friend. The outlaws eventually captured the mischievous petty dwarf Mim and took over his abode at Amon-Rud. While the outlaws resided there, Beleg returned once again and joined their band. Upon his leave from Doriath, Beleg was given permission by Thingol to carry the black sword Anglakel, which had been forged by the dark elf Eol and given to Thingol as a gift many years prior. At Amon-Rud, Mim eventually befriended Túrin, although he hated the rest of the group, especially Beleg, for the dwarf held a deep loathing for elves, and also because Beleg had healed the wounds of Androg, one of the outlaws who had killed Mim's son. Mim went on to betray the outlaws and informed orcs of the location of the outlaws' haven at Amon-Rud. Mim made a deal with the orcs that he would give away the Outlaws' location if Túrin was left alive, and the elf Beleg left bound for Mim to kill himself. The orcs raided Amon-Rûd. Túrin was then captured, and Beleg shackled, just as Mim had requested. Before Mim had the chance to kill Beleg, Androg, who was fatally wounded, appeared, and Mim escaped. With his last ounce of energy, Androg freed Beleg. The orcs that had taken Túrin made it as far as Dorthonion in the north before Beleg met up with them. On his journey, Beleg found the elf Gwyndor of Nargothrond, who had escaped the dungeons of Angband. Gwyndor told Beleg that he was close to the orcs that had taken Túrin into their custody. A storm came, and Beleg entered the orc camp, successfully retrieving his friend Túrin. Unconscious, Túrin was carried into the forest by Beleg, and upon freeing Túrin from his bonds, a great tragedy took place. Due to the curse of Morgoth on the Children of Húrin and the malice that was imbued into the blade Anglicel, the edge of the sword cut Túrin's flesh while Beleg was freeing him, and in an act of sheer panic, Túrin attacked Beleg, for he wasn't sure who was in his presence, and the cut made him think that he was being tortured once again by the vile orcs. In an instant, Túrin overpowered Beleg, and with the black sword, killed his friend. After the scuffle, it became clear to Túrin what had just occurred, and he wept upon the fallen Beleg. Gwyndor approached the overwhelmed Túrin, and the two buried Beleg. After this extremely tragic point of Túrin's life, he was dazed and filled with overwhelming grief. If not for Gwyndor, Túrin could very well have wandered into nothingness, but the elf led Túrin to the pools of Ivrin, a sacred place that provided healing in its waters. At the pools, Túrin drank of the water, and his spirit was calmed. Renewed of strength, Túrin journeyed with Gwyndor to the elven stronghold of Nargothrond, where Túrin donned yet another name, Agarwine, which meant bloodstained. There he reforged the black sword Anglicel, which he had carried since the fall of Beleg. Túrin gave the blade a new name, Gurthang, Iron of Death. The beautiful elven princess Finduilas, daughter of Orodreth, began to fall for Túrin. Túrin, however, did not return her love out of respect for Gwyndor. Years earlier, Finduilas had been betrothed to marry Gwyndor, but she no longer loved him since his years in captivity in Angband. But Gwyndor, when Túrin had gone, sat alone in dark thought. "And now at last," he said, "I believe the rumor of Angband, that Morgoth has cursed Húrin and all his kin." And going to find Finduilas, he said to her, "A sadness and doubt is upon you, and too often now I miss you, and begin to guess that you are avoiding me. Since you tell me not the cause, I must guess. Daughter of the house of Finarfin, let no grief lie between us, for though Morgoth has laid my life in ruin, you still I love. But go whither love leads you, for I am become unfit to wed you, and neither my prowess nor my counsel have any honor more." Then Finduilas wept. "Weep not yet," said Gwyndor, "but beware, lest you have cause. Not fitting is it that the elder children of Iluvatar should wed the younger, nor is it wise, for they are brief and soon pass, to leave us in widowhood while the world lasts. Neither will fate suffer it, unless it be once or twice only, for some high cause of doom that we do not perceive. But this man is not barren, even if he be both as fair and as brave. A doom lies on him, a dark doom. Enter not into it, and if you will, your love shall betray you to bitterness and death. For hearken to me, though he be indeed Agarwine, son of Umarth, his right name is Túrin, son of Húrin, whom Morgoth holds in Angband, and has cursed all his kin. Doubt not the power of Morgoth, Bauglier. Is it not written in me?" With his true identity known, the news spread throughout Nargothrond. Upon his discovery of Túrin's true name, King Orodreth held him in high honor, and Túrin became a close counselor to the Elven Lord. He showed immense skill in battle, and with his sword Gurthang, Túrin became known as Mormogil, the Black Sword. Túrin advised Orodreth to no longer hide in the shadows of their fortress, and thus the elves constructed a bridge out of Nargothrond. This bridge would lead to their undoing, for when it was made, the enemy learned of the fortress's location, and Morgoth sent his dragon Glaurung to take the stronghold. Glaurung indeed came with an army of orcs, and Nargothrond was sacked by the enemy. Among the fallen were Orodreth and Gwyndor. Finduilas was captured and taken away by the enemy. Before he fell in battle, Gwyndor gave Túrin the right to love her and protect her, for only she could save him from his cursed fate. Túrin was unable to protect Finduilas, for Glaurung entranced Túrin in a swoon, and Finduilas was taken away as a prisoner. And now he stood alone, for the few that had followed him had fled into hiding. But in that moment, Glaurung the Fell issued from the gaping doors of Felagund and lay behind, between Túrin and the bridge. Then suddenly he spoke by the evil spirit that was in him, saying,
"Hail, son of Húrin, well met."
The evil drake deceived Túrin and told him that his mother Morwen and sister Nienor were in dire need in Dor-lómin. In truth, Túrin's mother and sister were safe in Doriath. When the spell broke, Túrin journeyed to Dor-lómin to save his mother and sister. As he drew near to Dor-lómin, he visited the pools of Ivrin once again, the same place Gwyndor had taken him years earlier to have him rejuvenated by the cleansing waters. The pools, however, were frozen over and the area marred by Glaurung. At this moment, Túrin's cousin Tuor was nearby and noticed the wandering man, for Tuor was traveling to Gondolin at this time. Túrin did not notice Tuor, and Tuor did not recognize his cousin. Thus, they didn't speak to one another. This was the only time the two legendary cousins would ever cross paths. When Túrin arrived to his childhood home, his mother and sister were nowhere to be found. He went to the man Broda, who had taken over Dor-lómin and forced one of Túrin's kin, Eirin, to wed him. Broda informed Túrin that his mother and sister had escaped Dor-lómin. Enraged at this discovery and the actions of Broda, Túrin killed him and escaped back into the wild, leaving the remainder of his kin in those lands to a cruel fate. Túrin then attempted to find the abducted Finduilas, and he came in contact with a band of men that had recently attacked a group of orcs. They told him of the tragic fate of Finduilas, who had been slain during their raid of the orcs that detained her. Túrin was overcome with grief once again, a burden he bore most of his life, and the dreaded curse of the enemy yet again cut Túrin to his core. During this time of Túrin's journeys, his mother and sister, who had been residing in Doriath, went to Nargothrond to learn of Túrin's whereabouts. Upon their approach, the cunning Glaurung perceived their presence and went out to ensnare them. His breath created a thick fog, and the women were separated from each other. Glaurung then found Nienor, and the dragon put on Nienor a spell that made her forget all the days of her life. In sheer panic, Nienor fled into the wild. After the tragic fate of Finduilas, Túrin made his way to Brethil, where he called himself Turambar, Master of Fate, for at this chapter of his life, he decided he would take his own fate into his hands and not allow Morgoth to have a hold on him any longer. A strange occurrence took place soon after, when he found a naked woman lying on the burial of the fallen Finduilas. He clothed her and took her back to his abode and accepted her amongst the people there. The woman did not speak and appeared to have no idea who she was or where she had been. The woodmen of Brethil taught her how to speak, and she slowly regained the ability to talk. The woman was filled with a deep sadness, and Túrin gave her the name Niniel, which meant Maiden of Tears. The woman felt the most comfort when she was with Túrin, and after years had passed, the two fell in love and were married. In those days, word reached Túrin that Glaurung was stirring once again and had left Nargothrond, the city he had conquered years prior. Túrin was determined to put an end to the dragon once and for all. Túrin hid himself in a crevice in the earth, and when the dragon made his way over the crack, Túrin attacked. Therefore, going up to his foe, he set foot upon his belly, and seizing the hilts of Gurthang, he put forth his strength to withdraw it, and he cried in mockery of Glaurung's words at Nargothrond, "Hail, worm of Morgoth, well met again. Die now, and the darkness have you. Thus is Túrin, son of Húrin, avenged." Then he wrenched out the sword, and even as he did so, a spout of black blood followed it, and fell upon his hand, and his flesh was burned by the venom, so that he cried at the pain. Thereat Glaurung stirred, and opened his baleful eyes, and looked upon Turambar with such malice that it seemed to him that he was smitten by an arrow, and for that, and for the anguish of his hand, he fell in a swoon, and lay as one dead beside the dragon. The warrior's wife Niniel came to her husband's side and saw the dragon there. With his last words, Glaurung lifted the spell he had put on the woman, for she was Nienor, Túrin's sister, whom he had entranced years earlier. She then realized she had married her brother and was pregnant with his child. Overcome with great despair, Nienor threw herself over a cliff. Túrin came to his senses. The doom of Morgoth had finally taken its inevitable toll. It became clear to Túrin what had just occurred while he was unconscious. He took his sword Gurthang and fell upon it, taking his own life. In Brethil, his companions buried him and placed the stone of the Hapless there, which bore the names of Túrin and his sister Nienor. Eventually, Túrin's mother, Morwen, made her way to the stone, where she reunited with her long-lost husband, Húrin, who had been released from captivity in Angband. After this, Morwen died, and Húrin buried his wife near the graves of his fallen children. The site where the stone resided would stand the test of time, and after the ending of the First Age and the sinking of Beleriand, the Stone of the Hapless remained above the waves and became known as the island of Tol Morwen, named after Túrin's mother. It is said that at the end of the ages, when Morgoth is finally destroyed in the Dagor Dagorath, Túrin will return and be allowed to avenge his family by striking the final blow to the enemy with Gurthang. The tale of the Children of Húrin is one of Professor Tolkien's darkest stories. Túrin indeed was a man of immense valor and accomplished many great things for those that valiantly waged war against Morgoth. In the end, however, the Dark Lord's curse on Húrin's family made its mark, and the valiant Túrin Turambar, despite his heroic deeds, succumbed to that dreaded curse. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. Also, down in the comments, please let me know what you love most about the Children of Húrin and the character Túrin Turambar. I'll see you in the next video. This has been your pal, the Memory Troll. Cheers. Hail, worm of Morgoth, well met again. Die now, and the darkness have you. Thus is Túrin, son of Húrin, avenged.